Welcome to another episode of Bandofla. I'm your host, Fevzi Hussein. Okay, it's been a week or so since our last episode, and there is a lot going on out there. I guess, as we said in our preview, Bandofla hasn't commented in any great detail on the passing of Her Royal Highness Elizabeth II. And we felt sort of now I think everything's calmed down a little bit. It was time to share our thoughts on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. I have to say that the reaction of the public was it was phenomenal, actually. I know people that I wouldn't call them royalists by any stretch of the imagination. However, there was people who, I don't know if it was out of curiosity or if they felt obliged. I think those were two of the reasons when I spoke to people who went to pay their respect to the Queen when they queued up for an incredible amount of time. I think 12, 13, 14 hours was the times that I saw that people were queuing up. It's quite amazing. I mean, British people do like to queue, I guess, and that was a classic example of that. So obviously we've seen the Queen pass away. It happened quite quickly. I think as soon as Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, who we will touch on later, when she succeeded in the leadership election and then she went to see the Queen, everyone was quite shocked when the picture of her meeting the Queen was released. You saw some really significant bruising on her hand, which is never a good sign. So. But look, we're not royalists by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I would say that we're quite anti-monarchy on Bandofla. You know, when you consider the amount of public purse that goes towards keeping that institution afloat, and the number of issues, the big crisis that you know is going on around homeless people, healthcare, housing, education, etc., etc. I think it's hard to support having that degree of public purse supporting that system. But that said, you do have to acknowledge that the Queen, you know, she reigned for I think it was 7 decades, and she reigned through some pretty difficult times. And you have to say that she always did it with a good degree of dignity, despite other members of her family who have literally brought the royal family into disrepute. I think that, you know, there's recent episodes. You look at how Harry and Meghan are being treated, how they're being hounded by parts of what is primarily the far right media. It is disgusting. It really is dog whistling behaviour. But the Queen held the monarchy together in some quite difficult circumstances. And from that point alone, we have to respect that. However, let's have a look at the reaction of the public. I was fascinated, I have to say, you know, with some of the reactions that I saw. You know, the floral tributes, which were, you know, visually stunning to look at, but it does cause me a real degree of concern that people seem very comfortable with popping out to the florists and spending, you know, bouquets have gone up, everything's gone up, but you know, at least £30 to £40 on a bouquet. And yet those very same people will probably step over a homeless person who is desperately seeking shelter in a shop doorway. There's something wrong with society when people are doing this, and I think that really does give me a cause for concern. I want to touch on the issues around, touched on the queuing. That was incredible to see, and it was funny how some people just jumped the queue on the basis of being a celebrity, although obviously David Beckham didn't. David Beckham queued up with the people, and no doubt that does his stock, puts his stock up a lot higher, and he's seen as one of us in that sense. But let's touch on something called inheritance tax, which a lot of you will know. When both of your parents pass away, if you're fortunate enough to have parents who have left anything in a will that is beyond the inheritance tax threshold, which I think, I'm not a financial advisor, but the last figure I saw was about 375,000. I think it could double if there's parents involved. But if the amount left in a will is over the inheritance tax threshold, there's a whopping 40% inheritance tax that the likes of, if we're lucky enough to have something left in a will by our loved ones, you have to pay 40% tax before you can get your hands on that. It's been like that for quite a while. Governments tend to increase the threshold by a little bit every time there's a budget. But I think it's safe to say that the Queen had a little bit more than the threshold, the inheritance tax threshold in her will. And I have to say, this is another example of the class war that we are facing, because when you consider how the royal family are treated against the likes of me and you listening on this podcast, that we are definitely being treated differently. King Charles, as he's now known, King Charles II, he will be exempt in paying the 40% inheritance tax on the Queen's reported £500 million estate. When you think about how we're struggling to fund services in this country, I think the arguments to maintain any exemptions, they have to be reviewed, and you have to look at justification behind these exemptions. Now, apparently, this is all because of an old rule passed back in 1993 by the then Prime Minister John Major, that the inheritance tax by a royal family doesn't need to be paid on the transfer of assets from one sovereign to another, and it's primarily designed to protect the wealth of the royal family. I do genuinely believe that is yet another example of class war. Everyone else has to pay it, but when it comes to the royal family, they are exempt. I think that rule needs to be reviewed quite urgently. In other news linked to the royal family, it raised quite a few eyebrows. King Charles announced that if he is poorly or has to temporarily step down for any reason, Prince Andrew would step in, I think, if Charles is ill. So effectively, Prince Andrew has become the deputy king. When you consider the shitstorm that has surrounded this individual and the royal family, I think everyone was kind of thinking, how on earth have they come to that decision? It's terrible. if you ask me. Anyway, that's lots of eyebrows were raised on that. So when King Charles was being proclaimed, there was also media reports that up to 100 staff at his residence were sacked and had been given redundancy notices. There hasn't been much more in the media on that. I don't know whether it's a media blackout or, what the scenario is on that. But if that is true, that's really, really not good news. So the Queen's funeral happened, and there was a bank holiday, which everyone obviously appreciated. Personally, I tried not to watch the TV because I just found the whole thing quite depressing. If we saw this degree of wall-to-wall coverage in a country like North Korea, we would probably be, the media outlets will be saying what a authoritarian state it was. But yes, it was absolutely right to acknowledge the passing of the Queen, but it was a little bit difficult. It was almost as if people were being forced to mourn. And if you wish to mourn the passing of a Queen, that's everyone has the absolute right to do that. But there were a lot of people who simply didn't have that connection with the royal family for a number of reasons. So everything seemed to be cancelled on the day of the funeral. Cancer treatments, even food banks were closed, and other funerals were cancelled. So it was it certainly is it was a period of time that I think many people listening to this episode won't forget. Everyone will remember what they were doing on the day the Queen's funeral took place. I don't know. I think we've said enough on that. So in other news, obviously, Kwasi Kwarteng is the new Chancellor of the Exchequer. Put my teeth in. And one of the first things that Kwasi did was to scrap the cap on bankers' bonuses. I'm going to mention class war repeatedly on this episode because we are in a proper fight here, and people need to wake up and see what is going on around them in terms of how the haves are being treated in terms of the have-nots. Bankers are paid very handsomely. There's no doubt about that. They're paid really well. And a cap on the bonuses was placed for a reason. And Kwasi has now removed that cap on bankers' bonuses at the same time when millions, literally millions of us, of members of the public are going hungry, struggling to feed their families and to heat their homes. The temperature is dropping. Some measures have been put in place by the government on heating, but people are desperate. People are so desperate and so worried in this current cost of living crisis that we are all facing. So he chooses to support, bankers who have got massive salaries. It's just, you can see whose interests, what side the Tories are batting for. On top of that, there were tax breaks announced for the richest. At the top rate of income tax was dropped to 40%, which basically meant that a millionaire would see an extra £55,000 income a year. Yet when the government is challenged about reinstating the £20 a week universal credit uplift, they wouldn't budge on that. And now there was such an outcry on the Chancellor doing that he has actually had you put a U-turn in place, because even really rich people were, you know, saying to the Chancellor, why have you done this? We don't actually need that tax break. We don't need the extra money. You know, those people who need that financial support, you know, should be getting that extra money. So the Chancellor has done an embarrassing U-turn. And, you know, the first few weeks of Liz Truss as being Prime Minister has been an absolute disaster. And I don't use that phrase lightly. The Chancellor's decision with regards to the mini budget that he announced had the effect of tanking the economy. The pound dropped to its lowest ever level against the dollar. The euro, the value of the euro against the pound also fell. The value of the pound, I should say. And you know, there's been really deep criticism of the new Prime Minister, even from within her own party. So, you know, but what we're going to do, we're going to actually play you a short clip from Captain Scar, who many of you will have heard of. Captain Scar has done a brilliant song, and there was versions of it for David Cameron and I think for Boris Johnson, but there's an updated version now for the new Prime Minister. So have a listen to this. Okay, everyone, check this out. I think you'll enjoy this.
You ignore science, you ignored warnings.
It would help if I played the right one. Sorry. Bear with me. I do apologize. Right, rewind selector. Sorry about that, everyone. I've got the right clip now, so here we go. Check this out. Captain Scar with Liar, Liar.
Thank you for putting your faith in me to lead our great Conservative Party, the greatest political party on earth. I know that our beliefs resonate with the British people.
She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no. She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no. Hunger, cold and misery. The NHS falls on its knees. The stench of sewage pumped to sea is called eau de toiletterie. 2010 we reminisce. They promised us all stable bliss. Years of pain, they take the piss to serve up Huffy, Trussy, Liz.
We will transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, where everyone, everywhere has the opportunities they deserve. I will take action this day and action every day to make it happen.
She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no. She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no. It's a sleazy alumnus. They dish out wedge to mates, not us. But don't protest or make a fuss, cause pigs can't help being corrupt. Say Rwanda, Grenfell, Windrush, see the crimes and be the judge. So here's a message straight for trust. Shout it loud, enough's enough.
I will make sure people can get doctor's appointments and the NHS services they need. We will put our health service on a firm footing.
She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no. She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no. She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no. She's a liar, liar. She's a liar, liar. You can't trust her. No, 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 no.
Right, everyone. I think you should. That's by Captain Scar, and it's called hashtag Truss mix. So what I would encourage everyone to do is do download that, do get that. BBC apparently can't ban it, which is great. And yeah, all the profits are going to go to food banks. So definitely get behind that, please. So coming to the end of this episode, but before Bandofla goes, we want to touch on the great solidarity that we're seeing with trade unions working together, and because that is going to bring massive amount of pressure against the government and their cost of living crisis, which their actions really are not helping. The class war that I touched on is really in full effect. So massive shout out to the RMT union, massive shout out to the Communication Workers Union. UCU are balloting their members. There are so many ballots, TSSA, and lots of industrial action. Striking is never, it's always a last resort that workers take. And, you look at the obscene profits that some of these companies have been making, and you really do wonder, how the money is being pumped towards shareholders, towards chief executives, and other members of the board. And the people who make the profits, the workers, are, always overlooked. And the media always, when they get the likes of Mick Lynch on and Dave Ward, and Dempsey, and they always say, oh, if you get these big pay rises, it's going to really impact, it's not going to help the rate of inflation. But, it's a really controlled and a corrupt narrative, because they don't seem to be going to these CEOs who in many cases are awarding themselves 30% plus pay rises on top of already having massive salaries. I haven't seen the BBC, I haven't seen Sky News, I haven't seen Preston or anyone really challenging these CEOs when it comes to that inflation question. This is about redistributing wealth and giving workers their reasonable entitlement in terms of those people that have helped to make the profit. So big up solidarity to the trade unions. And please, I always say this, look, if you're not in a union, you need to join a union, because there's so much worker exploitation out there. Please join a union. If you're wondering what union to join, I'm in two trade unions. I'm in the Communication Workers Union and the GMB. If you go to the TUC Congress website, you can look at what sector you work in, and they will you can choose what union is best for you. So definitely join a trade union, and solidarity again. The Enough is Enough campaign continues to grow. There was a brilliant day of action on the 1st of October. A reported over 100,000 people took to the streets over all over the United Kingdom. There is definitely a big movement taking place. People have had enough. They're not going to take this shit anymore. And get behind enough is enough as well. So my final point, well, two actually. We're going to be switching over the Atlantic very soon in a future episode. We will be speaking with Delilah Barios. Delilah is running for governor in the state of Texas, and Bandofla's keen to support the green agenda, and certainly the Green Party in America have fantastic socialist policies from what I can see. And we will be touching on those with Delilah in a future episode. I believe the elections are in early November, so expect that in the next week or so. And my final point is I want to place on record an acknowledgement of a completely inspirational person, Sukhdev Reel, who is running the campaign to get justice for Ricky Reel, her son. I've touched on the Ricky Reel campaign. Sukhdev has released a book called Ricky Reel, Silence is Not an Option. I've recently finished reading that, and it's really shocking that someone's son can die in such tragic circumstances. And certainly reading the account from the Reel family, the treatment that the family had from the police in terms of the investigation, even in the coroner's the process involved in the coroner, the hearing, the questioning, the line of questioning, it just seems wrong. It completely wrong. So Sukhdev will be coming on to Bandafla to talk about how special Ricky was, and also her campaign to get justice for Ricky Reel. So on that note, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed this shortish episode. You can find us on Twitter at _Bandofla, BANDOFLA. If you want to email me, podcastbandofla@gmail.com. If you want to comment on anything we've said, if you go to the Anchor platform where the Bandofla podcast is, there is a message facility where you can leave a voice message, say whatever you want to say. If it's clean and constructive, we'll certainly play it on the next episode. So do take care of yourselves. Continue to keep as safe as possible. The COVID-19 situation seems to be picking up again, with winter just around the corner. So I think we all need to play our part in making sure that the pandemic doesn't have the same effect as it's had in the past. Fortunately, the current strains don't seem to be as destructive, but as someone who recently had COVID, I can tell you that it's still quite, has a big effect on the human body. So keep safe, everyone. Great seeing you again, and thank you for clicking on Bandofla and giving us a listen. Smash a like, subscribe on our YouTube channel, Bandofla, and we hope to see you soon. Do take care. Adios.